for Truth. I'm just going to go over the introductions here. This is going to be a really, really exciting debate and question and answer. So we've had people waiting in the chat almost for 2 hours now. So this is going to be fun. This is going to be engaging. We've got Raw Matt here who's going to be moderating. So thanks, Matt. We've got Jackson Wheat and RJ Downard. It's a Lion's Den 2-on-1 debate. We've got NephilimFree. So thanks for doing this, guys. Thanks for giving us your time. The structure, the format is going to be 5-minute openings and 45-minute discussion, followed by 45 minutes of questions and answers. So send your questions to Matt. Make sure you tag him at Modern Day Debate, and we'll make sure we get to those, because 45 minutes is a long time, although I'm sure it's going to fly by. I'm going to hand it over to Matt, who can then, I guess, hand it over to Neff or whoever is starting.
All right. Hey, everybody. I hope you're having a good night. And before we jump into this, I just want to let everybody know that you can find the speakers that are on now down in the link and description below. I posted a specific one for James below that links to his book and to his website and to his YouTube channel. And this one's going to be 2 versus 1. So about a 5-minute opening and discussion. We're going to jump right into that. And again, post your questions to me. And don't forget, if you like the channel, hit subscribe. And any questions at any time, direct them towards me. And I'm going to do my best to try to moderate if it gets chaotic. So whoever would like to go first, take the stage.
Well, you decide. Don't leave it up to us.
Okay. All right.
I'll be happy to jump in. Nobody's ever called me shy.
Well, he just said me, so I guess I'll go first. Okay, so I'm going to screen share a little something here. So I'm screen sharing now. All right, so can you see what I'm screen sharing? Does anybody can tell me, verify for me, please? They see a picture.
Yes, you were good.
Okay, great. So here's my position. Evolutionism is a secular religion promoted with 19th century science. It's not science, it's a philosophy. Millions of discoveries in biology have refuted evolution theory conclusively. Evolutionists deny the inference of design in the most bizarre ways. For example, they would look at this pile of dirt and grass in the middle of a field and obviously conclude that some intelligence put that there. They wouldn't believe that the wind just piled that sod right there. Somebody dumped that. But then they'll look at this MACFPF protein ring, which is comprised of numerous components, tens of thousands of amino acids, all of them, every single one, in its exact location, so that this device, it is a device to provide function, which is to punch holes in the membrane of a bacteria so that toxins can be put into the bacteria to kill it, is not designed. So the dirt pile is designed, but this complex ring of thousands of amino acids, which has mechanical function for the purpose of killing a bacteria produced by the human immune system, is not designed. This is evolutionists for you. So evolutionists would acknowledge that this simple machine on the right, this egg beater, which has about 8 moving parts, maybe 4, is obviously designed. But this machinery in the cell, which is of nanotechnology and has stators, bearings, gears, and its electromechanical engines, is not designed. This is evolutionists. Okay, evolutionism is a secular religion promoted with 19th century science. Charles Darwin couldn't possibly have imagined what science was going to discover. What you're looking at now is the Helicase machine that duplicates the DNA molecule. As the strand of DNA exits this machine, it's spinning at the speed of the turbine in a jet engine, thousands upon thousands of RPM, assembling the exact arrangement of amino acids that's found in the original strand and reproducing it on the fly. This is machinery comprised of numerous components of specific exacting size, shape, and dimension form, which operate in unison in a specific pattern, which have clamps and grips. They bond, they bind, they link, they squeeze, they release, they cut, they grab, And they do this in unison in a specific order to reproduce the DNA molecule. And evolutionists will say, that's not design. I mean, it's just nonsense. For example, here's what, this is something that Jonathan Wells, PhD biologist, has said. But biologists have known for 100 years that homologous or similar structures are often not produced by similar developmental pathways. They are known for 30 years that they are often not produced by similar genes either. So there's no empirically demonstrated mechanism to establish that homologies are due to common ancestry rather than common design. So, see, evolutionists have known these things for a century, and they continue to deny them. They deny them because of the religious aspect, not because of science. So Jeffrey Tompkins, geneticist, says, by using the same techniques we use in making comparisons between humans and chimps, human DNA also turns out to be roughly estimated to be about 35% similar, identical to a daffodil's DNA. But nobody would follow that a daffodil is 35% human, or vice versa. This is a facepalm. Even the daffodil is doing a facepalm on this. So I don't have time to present it, but from the properties of information, the properties of linguistics, and the properties of algorithms in the DNA molecule empirically verify. If anything can be said to be proven in science, the fact that DNA is a package of information that operates algorithmically and is organized with linguistics is proof that all living systems are designed. We're in the 21st century now. This is not 1840 anymore. Science has proven life is designed. Evolutionists rely on a package of assumptions to promote evolution with 19th century scientific views, but they have been left behind by modern science. So that's my position. The evidence is overwhelming and empirical, and there is no good argument from an evolutionist. Similarities is what evolutionists base the vast majority of their beliefs on, and they think that similarities is evidence of common ancestry, and that's their biggest argument, similarities. But similarities are just based on assumptions. The empirical evidence shows life was designed. It's algorithmic, it's information, and it's linguistically organized. These three things come only from intelligence. Molecules bumping into each other cannot produce information or from algorithms or linguistics. Now, because DNA is a package of information organized linguistically and which operates algorithmically, we know that life was designed. And that concludes my opening statement.
All right, good job, Neff. All right. And whoever would like to go first on your team, take off. It looks like Jackson's waving his hands.
RJ, can I go first?
Yeah, go ahead. By the way, is everybody seeing me? I turned my
Yeah, we
camera
can see
back
you.
on once I shut down
We see you,
Twitter.
RJ.
Okay.
Okay. So, hello, I'm Jackson. No, creationism is not and has never, ever been science. Neither is intelligent design, because there is no testable mechanism for either of them. They are literally based on magic. They have always been. What we need in science are naturalistic mechanisms, things we can test. We can test natural selection. We can test sexual selection. We can test genetic drift, gene flow, mutation, speciation. We can test all these things. You can't test creationism. It's not science. Neff threw out a whole bunch of jargon, which most of it had absolutely no meaning whatsoever. He threw out information and algorithm. I'd love to actually discuss examples with him of these things and pin him down specifically as to what he means. For instance, when he brought up the ATP synthase, no, these things are not perfect. If you study ATP synthase at all, if you read any of the technical literature, you can see that is very far from being a perfect system. It doesn't always just spin in this one direction. It actually spins. There's a lot of stochasticity to its spinning as to what it does. There's a whole sweep of literature on its evolution, on the evolution of ATPases, V and F ATPases, and how these evolved literally step by step into the modern ATP synthase. And from then on, genetic information is not really a thing. It's a buzzword. algorithm a buzzword. Jonathan Wells is an intelligent designer and is extremely wrong on numerous things. I mean, for instance, he was anti the whole peppered moth natural selection experiment, which was entirely correct, and yet he tried to refute it, even though he was wrong. But whatever. Yeah. So you also then have to understand. Neff talks about its evolution was refuted in the 1840s. Why then are over 99% of evolutionary of scientists in life science, geologists, paleontologists, biologists, they're evolutionary biologists, because the mechanisms that they propose work. The explanations that they propose work. There are no explanations posited by young Earth creationists that explain natural phenomena. They can't explain index fossils. There are literally no explanations in the creationist camp for index fossils. We've tried to find them. RJ and I have for our book and for videos we've done. There are no explanations from creationists on a lot of things because they can't explain them. And so because they can't, they won't. They will avoid these things like the plague. Genetics in a lot of ways is avoided. They use buzzwords. Georgia Purdom loves using buzzwords like information, but doesn't actually get into the nitty-gritty. I would love to discuss details with you of examples of beneficial mutations and things like that so that we can hammer out what exactly it is you mean by information. So if you want to know more about evolution, go see RJ or my channel because we both love to talk about that stuff. Evolution is most definitely true. So I think I'll hand it over to RJ.
All right, RJ.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm just also looking at the people in the live chat in there. The essence of evolution is natural common descent. And it's revealing that Neff went right into an origins or bust approach. How do individual molecules arise? How does an individual system functions without looking at how it actually operates in living organisms? He's relying on secondary sources a great deal, but we've got to think about what actually is going on with organisms that exist in the living world and all the vast amount of technical literature, virtually none of which has ever been done by a creationist or even an intelligent designer. All of those cute graphics, all of that material on ATPases, all of that is not coming out of the creationist literature. It's never been coming out of them. What we have in natural selection acting on individual organisms is an empirical thing. Organisms breed. Egg beaters do not breed. They do not replicate. They do not have inherited variation. It is a terrible example, but actual organisms, actual things do. And there is a vast field in any one of the areas that either Neff will bring up or I bring up. Don't take our word for it. Research on your own and discover the vast amount of data field that is being left out of the creationist position. Every scrap of information on fossils, on genetics, on the interactive biology, on ecosystems, on biogeography, layer on layer on layer of interconnecting evidence. Nephi can't even acknowledge that the Earth is billions of years old. He can't possibly fit his the data field into a frame that's that screwed up to where there's no functioning map of time going on. I didn't anticipate having to do a very long introduction because I want to discuss the data. I want to discuss the fossils. I want to discuss biological information. I want to discuss paleogenomics. I want to get to the nitty-gritty of why Jackson and I are firmly convinced that evolution is true, not because we are emboldened by some ideological materialist dogma, but because the evidence absolutely demands it. And no alternative exists as an explanatory model that gets anywhere near a full representation of the data field. Not Jeffrey Tompkins and his various evasion material, not Jonathan Wells or anybody else they could have cited, of which, by the way, there's only about 60 fact claimants operating in the entire anti-evolution movement compared to, in my last count, I think I'm up to about 67,000 scientists who are doing the actual technical work. No, this is a very lopsided worldview here. And the fact that paleontology in particular is a field where creationists haven't been active, viable players in over 100 years. It's just dead as a doornail as a discipline. So let's get to the facts. Let's get to the discussion on this and not have to spend time winding up for the pitch. Let's do the pitch.
Okay. All right, then we are jumping into it. You guys went quick. So we've got extra minutes on for Q&A now. It goes up to 50. All right, so we're jumping into the 45-minute discussion. So that was good. We will hop into that now with, sorry, making sure that I've got I don't read super chats now, right? That's before Q&A. Sorry. I'm going to assume that. So, Neph, you are up, my friend.
Okay. So what I'm hearing is a lot of appeal to authority. You guys. We hear that a lot. I understand you guys claim that ATP they figured out how it evolved. There's assumptions in that. It's scientific literature now is publishing that it looks to be like the vacuoles in the cell membrane actually evolved from the ATP synthase, not the other way around. I don't know if you're aware of that literature, but you should be because
it's still evolution, ain't it?
Okay, so but now here that information algorithms and linguistics are buzzwords instead of actually properties of DNA. We'll go over that if you like. That's demonstrable.
Yeah, let's go over that. Do you claim that all ALUs have the same information?
No.
Okay,
I probably don't claim that majority of what you think I do.
How do we get the ALUs in our genome?
Redundancy is expected if the genome is designed.
Are you claiming that all?
It's also used. It's used by the genetic information to turn on backup copies of mutated genes. Right?
Just in case there are people in the chat who don't understand what we're saying or watching the show, explain to the audience, Neph, what ALUs are and how many of them we got in our genome.
Well, I don't know how many, but there's many, and there are genetic repeated strings of information. The DNA is packed with them. There's
can you give a rough guess?
Possibly, I don't know exactly. Possibly hundreds of thousands to many millions. Okay, so
yeah, now you're in the ballpark. 1.4 million and growing.
Yeah,
did Adam and Eve have any of them?
So genetic redundancy is an expected if designed. You have a jet airplane, you have 3 computers in it because if one of them fails, you need a backup.
Did Adam and Eve have any?
Do you understand? Oh, sorry.
So there's the creationist response. Genetic redundancy is expected if design is in fact true.
Here's the difference though. With the airplane, they're actually working. The pseudogenes a lot of times are repeated genes that have literally no function. So it's not like having multiple turbines on an airplane. It's like having multiple turbines on an airplane that don't do anything.
Well, you don't know what they do. Because you don't know what they do.
Actually, we can test what they do. Actually, we can test that.
Well,
we can sequence.
Jackson, because we don't know what they do does not mean that they're not there for a reason.
We can sequence the genomes of different organisms and compare them, and we can do knockout sequences.
So, let me get back to this claim that DNA, the information linguistics and algorithms, are candy words, and they're not actually properties of the DNA. But that's demonstrably false because the reason we know that is because the DNA. The information in the DNA actually specifies. See, what information does is, now let's not talk over each other constantly. Okay? Give me just a few seconds to talk, and then I'll give you a few seconds to talk. Okay, so DNA actually specifies. It specifies the arrangement of amino acids, specifically which ones, in what order, so as to produce the 3-dimensional product of a protein. It specifies which genes to turn on and off during fetal development, so as to specialize cells and to develop the various anatomical features of an organism. These things don't happen randomly. They're specified.
Who said they were happening randomly?
Now information specifies things.
Who said they were happening randomly?
So this is one of the ways we know that what's in the DNA is actually information because it specifies biological functions and the structural design of the organism.
Yeah. Who said that this was happening randomly?
I didn't say you said it happened randomly. I'm pointing out that it didn't. No, it didn't.
No, I agree. It didn't happen randomly. I 100% agree with you. No one thinks that it did. No one.
I didn't say it did. I'm telling you that's the contrast.
What are you comparing it to? What are you comparing it to? Who thinks it's random then?
The contrast I'm pointing out. It's not undesigned either. It's not happenstance association of molecules because that doesn't produce information.
Hold on. Time out. Okay.
Chemical determinacy cannot have ordered the information in the DNA.
First of all, evolution is not random. So when you say evolution is not random, and molecular interactions are not random. So when you're comparing these, when you're saying this is designed because it does stuff non-randomly, that doesn't logically follow. There are lots of things. You are aware of like hydrogen bonds and ionic bonds and covalent
You're on the
bonds?
wrong track. I'm talking about it specifies. Okay.
Okay. Well, I'm trying to understand why you're comparing it to randomness.
I'll tell you why. Because natural processes don't specify anything.
Our natural process is random.
Natural processes can appear to be random,
but they're not random.
But Jackson, they don't specify anything. Information specifies.
Can I get?
If I were to tell you that
ALU question.
DNA specifies. It's highly specific. It specifies things that are ubular, complex and highly ordered. That's not a product of happenstance.
I agree.
It's not a product of undirected processes.
Okay, so that's a non sequitur. Again,
are you saying it's directed?
It is directed in large part by things like natural selection, sexual selection. There are mechanisms of evolution that are non-random. There are mechanisms of evolution that are random, such as genetic drift, which spreads certain alleles randomly and generally in smaller populations.
No. Natural selection doesn't direct the development of genetic information.
Natural selection is, by definition, is a selective mechanism of evolution.
Jackson, it selects. It does not direct.
Nothing is directing anything.
Are you going to moderate it all, Matt?
Jackson, do you understand the difference between direction and selection?
So, there is no evidence that anything is going in any direction. What we have are things like selective pressures, which cause populations to go in directions. Okay.
Selective pressure doesn't direct them, but DNA specifies highly complex things.
It's jumping back and forth between these things. You're trying to draw a non sequitur argument.
Jackson, you're not listening. Actually, what I'm saying is DNA specifies. In other words, if you have an operations manual for a photographer's light meter, the instructions on it tell you how to operate the thing. Okay, they're not produced by the thing. So natural selection doesn't specify the instructions in the DNA. It selects from what may already exist. Okay, it doesn't specify.
One sec, guys. Let's have RJ jump in here. You've been silent for like 5 minutes.
Yeah, I'm trying to bring up a specific example of actual DNA in our actual genome, the 1.4 million copies of ALUs, some of which do something, some of which doesn't. If you have a model here, you could tell us whether Adam and Eve, the original created kind, and or Noah and the kids had any ALUs, what they were as a pre-zygotic design to start out with, which ones were functional, which ones aren't. That's only a few thousand years ago. That's an easy thing to do from a paleogenomic perspective.
Really?
Yeah. Think so? Well, if your model, wait a minute, let me finish the question. How many ALUs did Adam and Eve have? Were any of them functional? What did they do? Compare and contrast with existing ALUs and what they do, and do you admit that there has been any natural evolution of them since their initial creation?
Okay, James, here's the absurdity of what you're saying. We don't know what the vast majority of the DNA molecule actually does, but you're expecting me to be able to tell you what all the ALUs did in Adam's DNA. That's just ridiculous. I've already answered you. And the answer is, now wait a minute, you asked a question. It's my turn to respond. Okay. You said you're harping on about ALU repeats in the DNA, and I've already explained that if DNA is designed, we would expect it to be there. But what I'm getting is a lot right now is a lot of goalpost moving. I'm telling you that DNA is empirically proven to be a product of intelligence because it's information that operates linguistically and is organized linguistically and operates algorithmically. And my question, hold on, James, James, please cool down a second. And my challenge to you is to explain the existence of information, linguistics, and algorithms with undirected natural.
That's your mantra. Apply it to ALUs. Are you claiming you have read? Are you saying you have read nothing at all on ALUs? And if so, why not?
I've answered your ALU question. They're
No,
expected
you
to be
haven't.
there
You
if
have
the DNA is designed.
to a goalpost to a different field. Are the ALUs in our brain that do stuff, are those intentionally designed? We have a whole technical literature on it.
Everything about DNA is designed, Jack.
Okay. Now, are the ALUs that cause diseases also designed?
If they've been mutated and now cause a disease, that the mutation process is not part
And so
of the
those
original
mutations
design.
were not in the original design. How did you determine that?
So good designs go bad. A bicycle rusts and falls apart. Do we say the bicycle isn't designed because it can rust?
How did you determine what ALUs were in the original design genome to be so sure
I
of that?
can't do that, nor can you show.
Created perfection?
James, I can't show you that any more than you can show me why ALUs are proof of evolution.
Because we can track their. You want to tackle that one, Jackson?
My question, my challenge to you is to provide a mechanism to produce information, linguistics, and algorithms by undirected chemical processes.
Nephi, that is all jargon word salad. Let's talk about an actual example. Why don't you pick a gene that has study behind it, like the gene for hemoglobin? Why don't you pick one that we actually know something about?
Well, the genes that produce the
Hold
proteins
on. Hold on. We have an actual, very detailed evolutionary history of the genes that produce hemoglobin. Do you understand? Have you read any of the literature on it?
Similarities in genes in one species that produce hemoglobin in one species and in another species is not evidence that it evolved.
Can I ask you a question? Do you have similar genetics?
Hold on, now let me respond, guys. If you're just going to talk over and over me constantly, I'm trying to respond to it, James, and you're yelling at me. James, you're yelling at me. I'm responding to his question. James, you're yelling at me. I'm trying to respond to Jackson. Jackson.
RJ, hold on.
Jackson, the cascade process of the hemoglobin, proteins, you know that it's like uber-stuber complex, right?
You know that
you're welcome. Hold on. I didn't even get to finish my response, guys. Wow. Okay. So if you want to believe that cascade can happen by chance, undirected associations of molecules, you're welcome to, but I can't go there. But what I can tell you is that DNA is information, linguistics, and algorithms, and you're denying that. You're saying it doesn't specify. My question to you is, does DNA specify the arrangement of amino acids to produce the proteins, and does it specify the cell specialization and arrangement that produces the anatomical structures of an organism during fetal development? Is that specified or unspecified, Jack?
Nephi, let's start at the basics, because I think we have to start with the basics with you.
Why don't you answer my question?
Do I think it's
I've been asking the question for 10 minutes.
I have already agreed that DNA specifies amino acids which become proteins and all that. I've already said that. Fine, we all accept and acknowledge that.
And does it also specify the cell specialization and arrangement and their organization to produce the structural designs of the organism during
I've already said that that's true. I've already said we all know that that's true.
And the information does specify, right? Right.
What do you mean by information? What are you referring to?
Well, I'd be happy to tell you what information is.
Okay, please do. Please be succinct.
Information is knowledge conveyed from a sender to a receiver using language agreed upon by both parties. Okay.
Who has knowledge? Who has knowledge? When DNA interacts with RNA polymerase, which one of them contains knowledge?
The knowledge that the specific arrangement of the amino acids will produce the machine component that has a function, and it's not non-functional, is the knowledge that was encoded into the DNA. The recipient of that knowledge is the machinery of the cell.
Okay. So by your own definition, chemicals are knowledge. The arrangement of nucleobases in DNA is knowledge by your definition.
It's recorded knowledge, and you've already agreed that they specify. Because they specify, evolution cannot be true.
That does not logically follow in any conceivable universe. But hold on. So Nephi,
specification is a product of intelligence.
Jackson. That's in this context, that's entirely false, because I encourage you to look at DNA and figure out which part of it, if we're talking about transcription and translation, which are involved in making proteins, which part of that is design, which part is knowledge. And according to you, as in just now, you just said knowledge is the sequence of nucleobases. How on earth is so? Knowledge is just chemicals, according to you, which is a very bizarre definition. We already have a definition.
No, I didn't say knowledge is chemicals.
You did actually.
No.
Yeah,
the DNA molecule
is
the DNA molecule is a medium encoded with the information, just like a book is a medium encoded.
There's no information encoded in it. It is what is it. No, there isn't. It is a set of
Let's
molecules.
talk about that.
DNA. Oh, absolutely. DNA is a molecule. DNA is a molecule. The sequence of which, the sequence of molecules within it, has functions. So if you can point to a part of that is not a molecule, by all means.
Function. There you go. Now, so you've admitted, Jackson, that DNA specifies and that it produces things.
We've already been over this, Nephi.
It specifies things that have function. The problem for you is that specification is something that's produced by intelligence.
So if I can point you to an example of...
Hold on, please. Let me finish. Specification is something that's produced by intelligence.
Wait, Nephi, if I can point you to an example...
process, okay?
So if I can point you to an example
hold on,
of...
Jackson,
if I can point you to an example...
Jackson, to specify something is to state what will happen, is to order it by intent. There is an intentional purpose.
Yeah, Nephi, I got that.
There is a volitional action taken by a mind and intelligence when specificity exists. So when you acknowledge that DNA specifies these things, you're acknowledging intelligence has done it.
Okay, so if I can point you to an example of a gene which has undergone mutation, which now has a new function or has changed in function, will you admit that it does not require intelligence? Will you admit that? If I can point you to an example.
Change in function.
Yes, if I can point you to an example of a change in function, then will you renounce the idea that intelligence is needed to evolve genes or to change genes?
No, because you can modify an existing design.
No. So if we can show this,
let me answer. Let me answer your question. Let me answer.
You just said no.
Okay. You can modify a gene and produce something that's going to have a negative effect, or something that has a positive effect and carries along the negative with it, and that's not evidence that mutation specifies.
I didn't say that. I didn't say that, did I? I didn't say that. First of all, you don't know that there is negative going along with it. You haven't. I don't know how you just determine that. If I can point you to an example of a gene, of a single gene that has changed as a result of mutations, not by humans, not by artificial selection, of mutations in nature, which has changed a gene function, will you renounce the idea that intelligent design is necessary for genes?
Okay, hold on. Before Neff answers right now, I'm going to have RJ and James come back, just so he's got some equal time. I mean,
I really wanted to answer that question.
I wanted to bring up a really specific example. Jackson, you can have your gene handy. I want to go deeper to the coding level. Mitochondria, among others, have variant coding systems. They don't have identical codon assignments. Does Nephi claim that all of those codon reassignments were intentionally done by a mind, or does he allow that formal information generator system to have been modified by natural means?
Mutations can occur. Mutations don't design anything. They've never been. It's never been observed that mutations design anything with function. That's not observed.
Let me change the question. Have you ever studied anything at all about the mitochondrial codon assignments? Yes or no?
No, I'm not sure what that is.
Okay, and I'll tell you why, because it isn't discussed in the anti-evolution literature.
So just give a quick summary of what you think it is about that.
I now am trying to get you to apply your vague notions of information to actual things. Are you claiming that the codon system that is used in mitochondria is designed to be that way by a mind, or did it come about as a natural evolutionary variation on the previously existing codon system? Apply your model to this issue.
Okay, there is nothing about DNA that is not designed except the negative effects of random mutation. There's nothing about it that's not
And
designed.
so you are claiming that the mitochondrial codon system was deliberately designed to be the way it is, as was the one that is different in the other organisms.
God designed organisms to have variety.
So you're claiming that even though we can observe the actual mutation process of codon reassignments in nature today, that you're claiming that God is the one that's designing that and not the natural mutations.
So what you're talking about now is programmed mutation. There's two kinds of mutation, basically. There's undirected random mutation, and then there is mutation or change to DNA, which occurs because the information directs it. The information in the DNA. And one of the examples of this, one of the examples of this is somatic mutations in the immune system, which work on the fly to looking for something that works to stop an antigen. Okay, so
please put a source up on that.
That's evidence of design, by the way. So now what I'm hearing is that information in algorithms and linguistics don't actually exist in DNA, even though it's been well published numerous times that these are properties of DNA.
Published by whom, Nephi?
By numerous science papers. Are you unaware of them?
Such as?
Wow, really?
Such as?
Okay. So you don't know
name
about
one of the
any
scientists
papers?
that's done this.
Oh, sure. Okay. So give me just a moment. I'll pull up sources for you. I want everybody listening to understand what we're hearing now is James is arguing that it's not published in any science journals that DNA is information algorithms.
A source.
Is that what we're hearing, James?
By the way, we're far away. We're really far away from the evolutionary data field.
James,
we're into an abstract origins or bust information and semantic and semiotics and abstractions. We have observed that you cannot apply it to mitochondria. You can't apply it to ALU. Can't apply it to any DNA. Name for me any notable creationist who does work in genetics.
So James, I want to be clear about this. It sounds as though you're saying that it's not published in any science journal that DNA is information linguistics or algorithms. Is that what you're saying?
In the way you want it to be, no.
Oh, wait a minute.
You want it to be, no.
Oh, okay. So do you recant what you just said?
Nephew, why don't you define something? Because we tried pinning you down on what information is.
So here are some sources, okay? Rutgers University, The Linguistics of DNA, Words, Sentences, Grammar, Phonetics, Semantics. Okay. The genetic group.
Are they young Earth creationists?
No, none of these are creationist sources.
Okay. Do any of them?
Every one of them is a secular. James, hold on. You asked for sources. I'm going to give them.
James, common descent.
James, you asked for sources. I'm going to give you a few.
Do any of them reject natural common descent?
That's irrelevant to whether or not they discuss. They publish.
No, it's not. Nephi. No, it is not.
Okay, James. I'm going to take off. I'm going to take off. It's been good. But if you guys are just going to talk over me constantly and don't allow me to respond to anything and won't respond to my response to your claims, then it's just not point. There's no point in me being here. So unless you guys can tone it down just a little and allow me to respond to your claims, then this is just you guys talking over somebody constantly as though you win the game. It doesn't work that way with me. All right. So I'm going to provide what you asked for, whether you like it or not. Right.
Mm-hmm. So, and I'm going to look through every single one of them.
James, you've got to chill your machine just a second. Okay. The point is this. It doesn't matter to me whether these guys who published this all believe in evolution. That's not the point. The point is they acknowledge that DNA is information organized linguistically and operating algorithmically. That is the point I'm making. We can discuss whether or not they accept the inference of design from that or not. That'd be just like you refusing the inference of design. It doesn't matter one bit to me. It doesn't put a speck of dirt on my shoulder. Here's the point, though. Genetic language, grammar, semantics. This is published in NCBI. Okay, from the Swedish Karolinska Institute talks extensively about semantics and linguistics in DNA. Here's another paper. This is from the United States National Library of Medicine. They speak of linguistics properties of DNA. The alphabet of DNA operates
linguistically. Does any one of those indicate design?
This one is from Live Science.
Does any
Here's
one
from
of them?
genetics. Hold on. Here's from genetics.org. This one's from
Neffy, we got the point.
cps.bu.ed.
Neffy,
Here's
we
from
get the point.
NCBI. The linguistics
You have
of
lots of
DNA.
sources that refer
I
to
have
DNA as
I have a
language. We
lot of
get it.
sources. Right.
Yes, we
So-
get it.
Try to put them in the video.
So James's early claim that it's
No.
not published in the journals, that DNA is linguistic and operates algorithmically is flawed.
Neffy, what
I
is
said,
happening? These are
did they
people
do
using these
anything
terms
to say it the way
analogously.
it works?
Yeah, what he's saying is, yeah, they are using these terms analogously. You are trying to make an argument from analogy to design when none of these people are saying that or indicating that in any way, shape, or form. That is complete nonsense. It's a non sequitur.
No, it's not nonsense, but that's exactly what I'm doing. Of course, when I stare and looking at
Your
a
argument
car,
is a non sequitur.
I don't say, gee, that's similar to a car. I say it is a car because that's what it is. It doesn't matter to me that you or anybody else denies the fact that DNA is information linguistics and algorithms. See, that's what's happened. You remember
What
I
does that
said
mean,
when I
Neffy?
started.
What does that mean?
When I started out in here, during my opening, I said that evolutionists refuse the inference from design, and even though it's obvious and empirical, the fact here's what's modern science. Remember, I said it's 19th century science, a secular religion promoted in 19th century.
Right.
So the 20th century science has discovered that DNA is a package of information that's organized linguistically and operates algorithmically. And the challenge to the evolutionist is show us a mechanism. Is it
Show us what
possible for
algorithmic means.
information, algorithms, or linguistics to be
Show
produced
us
by
how that
undirected,
indicates.
unintelligent process?
Oh my gosh, this. How do you keep repeating the same mantras? We've already been over. Also, your screen is
You
my
haven't
screen.
attempted to answer it.
Okay. Yes, we have actually. This was good. It goes back to what I said originally.
No,
Originally, when I was it was when I was talking about natural selection and intermolecular forces, things like that. That is not just random. When you say undirected, it seems like you're referring to something being teleological, like there's an end goal. There is no end goal.
Teleological.
Yeah,
yes,
there is. That doesn't. Yes, that doesn't exist in biology. Sorry for you.
No. See, when things are
No, actually, no, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. Sorry.
No, Jackson.
No.
You
We listen to you ramble. It's my turn. Okay. Natural selection selects organisms. Okay. You have mutations, you have recombination. These generate genetic variation. These are either selected or they're not selected. Yes, they're selected by the environment or by other or by mates, and as in sexual selection. And you have other mechanisms like genetic drift and gene flow. So these all contribute to the biodiversity of life. Now, I was talking earlier about showing you mutations. There are, as you mentioned earlier, the unspecified mutations or whatever. We can talk about examples of those. You won't. You have your one talking point, which is look at language. DNA is a language. DNA is an algorithm. That doesn't mean anything. That doesn't mean anything. If you
it's absolutely irrefutable.
If you can't give a single example referring to specific genes, as we've been trying to pull you over and over and over, you haven't done that.
All of them. Every one.
Wow. All of them. Every single one.
So Jackson, here's the thing about believing that natural selection creates the genome. That's not true.
No, you're right. It's not true because it's not what happened.
Jackson, natural selection can't see the vast majority of mutations. The only time natural selection can see a mutation is if it causes such a negative effect in the organism that gets wiped out by natural selection.
That's not true either. That's not true. No,
virtually, Jackson.
I encourage you to read a paper on the fitness of.
Hold on, please. Hold on. Virtually all mutations are invisible to natural selection.
Virtually all? Are you kidding me?
Because they cause such a minute change to the organism that natural selection won't see it.
Oh my goodness! I can't believe you just. Actually, I'm not surprised because everything you said has been so absolutely incorrect.
So that's a science fact, Jackson.
It's not actually. Read a paper on the fitness distribution of mutations. Are you kidding me?
Those ideas are based upon millions of mutations, not individual ones, Jackson.
Hey, Neff, you're screen sharing, by the way. Can you turn that off?
Your screen sharing, yeah.
Oh,
Oh,
no,
it's the Nephi show.
natural selection can only see a mutation if it produces a profound effect in an organism.
No,
The
not
vast
necessarily.
majority of mutations
Not
cause
necessarily.
slightly deleterious effects, and they are not visible to natural selection. And if you don't like that,
Mm.
take that up with Jonathan Sanford. He probably knows more about DNA than
Really?
anybody ever me.
Jonathan Sanford, really? Are you kidding me? The
Sure.
genetic entropy
That's
tool.
really?
question.
Jonathan
my gosh.
Sanford, really? Yeah,
We kicked his
really.
butt in a video we
Yeah,
did not
sure
too long
you
ago.
did.
Yeah, he's
James
hilarious.
Stewart, right? Right? Yeah.
Do what?
Let me ask Nephilim a very specific question about Jonathan Sanford. Have you ever tried fact checking his source at citations?
Oh,
I've-
Jay, you
I've-
already know
I've-
the answer.
I've read some of them.
No, you haven't. Ridiculous.
What do you think it means to do a source fact check analysis? Crickets. What
Hello?
do you think it means to do a source analysis of a technical argument and apply that to Sanford?
The claim
Well,
has
well,
been
wait.
made that it's not true that the natural selection cannot see the majority of mutations, but that is true. That's not a creationist
You
idea.
want to answer my question on Sanford, who you brought up?
Yeah, you
I don't care if you berate all the creationists in the world. It doesn't change anything about the facts. So
How come
natural
you can't
selection,
answer a simple question?
natural
Are you
selection-
telling us, take out your Bible and swear on it at imperilment of your eternal damnation and tell us all, have you ever tried source fact checking to the original claims that Sanford does when he cites a technical source to make sure that he is not misrepresenting the technical literature?
I have verified the things that Jackson, that he has said, James, that he has said with secular sources. So I don't need to dig
Such as
deeply
what?
into him.
Such as what?
As contamination by slightly deleterious mutation. Why have we not gone extinct 100 times over?
Are you
Because are you aware that he misrepresented the paper he got that from? He misrepresented James Crow's work
He's
to
not
get
the
that
only one.
conclusion.
The point is, mutation
You didn't
cannot
fact
be
check it.
seen by natural selection
Nephi.
unless they cause a profound
Nephi,
effect.
we
right?
have you on camera right now. You just failed because the claim that you just brought up, which with RJ and I have both looked into, was wrong. You did not fact check it.
So here's the claim that
everyone in the audience just saw you fail on that claim, Nephi. Everyone in the audience.
So here's the claim that you evolutionists are making right now. You're claiming that natural selection sees every mutation that happens in the DNA.
No, I'm not.
The majority even. That's ridiculous. Where do you guys get your crazy pseudoscience from? What the hell? I mean, this is not published in the journal.
You haven't brought up a single scientific idea this entire time.
I'm going to put it like this. There is not one science paper in any journal that says natural selection can see the vast majority of mutations. There is not one.
Yeah,
there is not one.
Yeah, thank you, Matt. Okay, it is a bald-faced lie to claim that modern evolutionary theory is working on 19th or old science. I read the technical literature. The entire science work is being done in the evolutionary community. It's hard to scrape together 100 people in the entire creationism movement that have even been published in regular science materials, and virtually none of them are geneticists. They are not contributing to that field. They're not contributing to paleontology. They're not even doing the work on those ATP or any of those other subject matters. Try tracking them down and finding out. Stop trying to give the impression that your creationism that is 20th century young earth creationism, invented in the 1960s and refined in the decades since, is somehow representing the science field when you don't do the work and never have.
Creationism existed before evolutionism, James. That's ridiculous.
Not young earth creationism.
Oh, yes, it did. It absolutely did. So,
modern creationism dates back to the 40s.
So, Jackson, here's the thing. What you put forward is this idea that natural selection sees the majority of mutations that occur in organisms, and that's scientifically not true. That's not published in the journals. No scientist, you won't find one paper in one science journal anywhere that says that. Not one evolutionist, biologist, or geneticist on this planet would make that ridiculous statement. Not one. So you put forth pseudoscience.
I think you have misinterpreted. You have
and then
misunderstood what I said.
What you're trying to do is you brought that.
You have misunderstood what I said.
No, Jackson. And what you did is you brought that pseudoscience argument, that scientifically invalid argument, to play in trying to answer for the fact that DNA specifies the complexity and the arrangement of cells to produce the physical structural designs of living things and the arrangements of proteins. You're saying that you pointed to natural selection, and I said natural selection doesn't prescribe these things, but you kept saying natural selection is selecting constantly, and that's what.
Yeah, it is.
Hold on, Jackson. This is what you did, alluding that natural selection is what ends up causing what we call specificity in the DNA that specifies all this stuff, but that's not true, because the argument you made to try to support that idea is a pseudoscience argument that natural selection can see the majority of mutations, which is scientifically false. So you're putting forth your 19th century thinking and your pseudoscience against real science, and that's why evolution is not science.
Talk about paleontology.
None of that. None of what you said logically followed. Not a single bit of it.
Every bit of it is exactly a breakdown of what just happened.
I don't understand why I get into these conversations with you, because it is obvious, it is painfully obvious that you have never, ever bothered to read any literature in genetics. You've never bothered to fact check anyone. It is astounding.
Right.
Well, we showed that just a little while ago.
I only
Jackson, where are these papers in the journals that say natural selection can see the majority of mutations? Where are they? You got some?
They don't need to see.
Is there one?
You want me to find a paper that says
what is a neutral mutation?
My challenge to you to carry forward after this hangout is for you to do a video showing the science papers in the journals that state that where geneticists state that natural selection is able to see the majority of mutations.
I will say many, not the majority. I will say many.
What percentage, Jackson? 40%?
Natural selection. Organisms, really? Genes.
10%?
I have no idea.
Oh, you don't even know, but you say it happens.
We can verify that it happens. Are you joking? Seriously?
The specificity of information in the DNA is empirical evidence.
Of the Italian wall lizards? Have you ever heard of Italian wall lizards? There was a population moved from one island to another, and via natural selection, they developed new characteristics. Yes, they did actually. They have changed both ethologically, and they have changed in their morphology slightly because it's only a few decades, but they have changed. And
I discussed that. That's one of the first things I talked about when I got on the internet.
We know that this occurred via mutations and recombination, generating genetic diversity, and this was naturally selected. No. You have no argument there.
I do. So let me respond to that claim. Okay, so here's what happened.
Did that not happen?
I'll explain it. So here's what happened. A species of lizard called Padmakaru, and they released
That's not the name of the lizard. That's the name of the island.
And they named it after the island. And
no, they didn't. It's
Jackson. The
lizard is Podarcus sicula.
Jackson.
The island is
Jackson. Hold on.
You have never read anything about this,
Jackson. They named the lizard.
I know Nephilim causes that in people.
Hold on. Now let me respond. They named the lizard Padmakaru, and the speciation event, what they call it, Podkapiste. Okay, so you might need to look into that. So here's what happened. They released the lizard on an island in the Mediterranean. Read the literature, Jackson.
We're already in the Mediterranean.
You're laughing at yourself. When you go out of this hangout and look into it, you're going to laugh at yourself.
So let's have some more laughter. Let's talk about.
Wait. Now let me respond, guys. Hold on. So here's the claim. Okay, so this is what actually happened. They released the lizard on an island in the Mediterranean. They came back 36 years later. Researchers collected some of these lizards, and they studied them and found cecal valves in their stomachs that were not there. They're not in the parent population that existed on the mainland of Italy. Okay, so they changed the diet of these lizards in a controlled environment to an arthropod diet.
No, they did not.
And after 16 weeks, these cecal valves disappeared again. So what this demonstrated is that a change in the environment, when the lizard was loosed on the island, a change in its diet caused the organism to respond to that environment by stop expressing the genes that produce cecal valves in its stomach. Then when the organism was taken from the island and back to the mainland and its diet was reverted to its original, they gained the cecal, they lost the cecal valves again. So all this proves is that the genetic information to produce the cecal valves already existed in the lizard.
No, that is not what that means.
Mutation didn't design it. It was
That is not what that
there.
means.
All that was natural selection causing an ingeniously designed process whereby the organism turned off the genes for cecal valves.
You find the paper. Find me the paper where the researchers say the
them back on
where the researchers say the cecal valve already existed. Find me that paper.
That was a failure of evolutionists. Jackson, that example of evolution. Jackson, that example of evolution.
So completely misunderstood and misrepresented that. It is comical.
No, I gave you the facts about it. Jackson,
no, you
that
didn't.
example of example of
facts.
evolution left evolutionists with egg on their face for years.
No, you have never in your life given a fact regarding evolution.
Put the citation up in the video description or in the comments on the video after we're done.
Please do.
RJ, why don't you take over for a little bit? We have 5 minutes left.
Your crazy belief that mutation created cecal valves is not supported by.
Okay, now I want to talk about.
Sorry, you lose, Neff.
You're a young Earth creationist, correct, Neff?
Of course I am. I believe the truth.
Okay, so you believe that there were therapsids created in Eden, and there were also therapsids on the ark, right?
Of course, there was 7 of every clean kind and 2 of each unclean on the ark. Of course.
Okay. How many therapsid kinds are there?
I have no idea. I don't even know how many original kinds of bird that God made. He may have made 10 different kinds of bird. He may have made 30 different original kinds of bird. Don't know.
You don't read Leitner's work on created Behrman kinds in birds?
I don't think they've got Behrmanology down to, it hasn't nailed it all down yet. Neither
they can't nail it because Behrmanology is built on a false assumption. But there is a technical Behrman literature. Are you telling me that you haven't read anything on the Behrmanology of birds by Leitner?
I've read some things about Behrmanology, but as I said, Behrmanology is going to be something that's terribly difficult to nail down, and it's going to take a long time. And neither can evolutionists nail down their claims that one type of organism evolved from another.
So let's talk about those therapsids. Where are they now?
Well, they're either in the earth, or they're living here, or they're extinct. One of the two. What do you mean? Why are they on Mars or something?
If you bumped over one, what would be the characteristics of a therapsid that would make you go, wow, that's a therapsid?
Well, that would I guess I'd have to study the anatomy. Get to the point you're trying to make. You're going to make a claim that there's an evolution.
There is 100 million years worth of life that you don't even allow to be 100 million years worth of life because you're a young Earth creationist, and then you pay zero attention to it. And therefore don't notice that creationists can't pay much attention to it either because it is impossible to cram the damn therapsids into the framework. Ooh, you pulled up a source, you pulled up something you copied from something else.
Well, the claims of evolution are just ridiculous and been refuted. This is the one that you're probably wanting to harp on so much, the one that I refuted.
No, I'm talking about therapsids. I'm not talking about the formation of bird beaks.
Well, this is where you're going with it.
Let's talk about, you posted jaw to ear magic back in January on that in response to my video. So I am really anxious to discuss that post.
Okay, so
shall we do that?
So how is it possible for those organisms to have evolved?
I'd be delighted to talk about. Let's start off with the dentary bone in therapsids. Are you aware of the selection pressures that were in play on the evolution of the dentary bone?
There's no such thing as evolutionary pressure. I don't know what you're talking about. You're more of your evolutionist pseudoscience.
What are the dynamic pressures that are applying to insectivores? Neff?
There is no such thing as evolutionary pressure, James. You're talking.
I'm sorry.
Pseudoscience.
Are you aware of how insectivorous diet alters the shape of jaws and the teeth structure?
I'm aware that bones detach from the area around the anterior portion of the jaw in certain species and migrate to become the ossicles of the middle ear. I am aware of that, if that's what you're thinking.
Yeah, that wasn't what I was talking about. I'm still talking about the dentary bone.
Mm-hmm. So you haven't given me a reason to believe these creatures evolved.
You are unaware of the fact that an insectivorous diet selects for narrow jaws with backward pointing teeth.
So, and how is that evidence of evolution?
Oh, it's pieces of the evidence. It's one of the reasons why the dentary bone was expanding in the synapses for the development of the jaw form.
Well, expanding jaw, shrinking jaw, that's not evidence of evolution. They have a jaw.
Yes, it is. Why did God make proboscideans?
How did DNA come into existence by chemical means?
I'm asking the question here.
Oh no, I'm asking questions too. You've asked me 3. I'm asking. It's my turn to ask one. It's my turn to ask.
Have you ever studied?
It's my turn to ask one. You've asked about 4 or 5.
Oh, I know, because you're never going to be able to explain why God would make a form that was directly predicted on evolutionary grounds.
For random genetic mutation? How is it possible for random genetic, undirected chemical processes to create the specified information, apply linguistics organization and algorithmic operation to it, so that it specifies the structural design of organisms? Can you explain to us how that's possible? You can't answer, can you?
Because it's a meaningless question. Because your genetic algorithms and all of your dribble don't explain a damn thing. You can't apply it to anything. We have already asked you to apply your models to mitochondrial DNA and codon assignments, to ALUs, to deal with it on any subject whatsoever. You can't apply it to anything. You might as well call it Spurgle Vlap Nickel Block Snoogie Bloob, because it's exactly the same meaningless concept.
Well, you're saying that information linguistics and algorithms are meaningless. That's ridiculous.
The way you use them, they are, because you can't apply them to anything. We've just seen you not do it.
They really are algorithmic. They really are linguistic, and it really is information. Your claim that it's not is bizarre.
And you can't apply it to anything. You can't explain the data.
Absolutely, I can. It specifies, for example, in the protein, in production of large proteins, which have thousands of amino acids, it specifies this one will go here, this one will go there, this one will go here. And the finished product is so complex that scientists are still not completely sure how protein formation occurs. And these proteins are then become mechanical components in a machine that has functions. So all the proteins in the helicase machine, all the proteins in the polymerase machine, all the proteins in the ribosome, these are all designed because they're specified.
Ooh, and what's in the middle of a ribosome?
Your proteins are specified. Complex.
What's in the middle of a ribosome?
What's in the middle?
Is it a protein in the middle of a ribosome?
I don't play evolutionist tests. Make your argument.
In the middle of a ribosome, it's a RNA molecule, not a protein. Why is that?
I didn't say there was no RNA is brought to it. So
no, it's not. No, it's the core of the ribosome. This has been known for 15 years, Buckaroo. The core of the ribosome is an RNA molecule. Why is that?
Because that's how it's designed. Can you tell me how molecular components comprised of thousands of amino acids with outrageous specificity in form and shape are arranged by undirected processes? So that when they're
what is your criteria for outrageous?
So when they're assembled together, they operate mechanically to select or reject a specific amino acid. Can you explain how unspecified, undirected process is, why it's logical to believe that can be the producer of that?
He's in mantra mode again. I can't get you to deal with specific subjects. Name a molecule, and I'll want to be asking you source data on it. That when you are looking at any of these molecules that you claim are so outrageously perfectly fabulous, have you bothered to read much of the technical literature on them?
I don't play evolutionist tests. I asked you a question. You won't respond to it.
Engaging as it is right now, that's guys.
Repeat the same answer we had before.
And I allowed it to go a couple minutes more just because the openings were somewhat shortened. So I think it's suitable to give the debaters a couple minutes to kind of just conclude their thoughts. If you guys want to do maybe 2 minutes, I can put the timer on that. Just since you started, Neff, we could always let you conclude your thoughts on the discussion portion and then move on to RJ and Jackson. And then that'll be followed by the Q&A for 45 minutes.
Yay.
Okay, Neff, whenever you're ready, I'm going to start the timer.
Okay, I'm ready. Thanks. So I
ahead.
get questions. They don't get answers. We heard Jackson make pseudoscience arguments that, that somehow natural selection is able to see the majority of mutations, which is not
I already
published
said not.
in the literature, or it's not even a large percentage of them. Not even a small percentage of them. So unless they produce and then use this as an argument for the specificity the DNA, which is absurd. So is our DNA algorithmic? Absolutely, here it is. It sure is. This is one actual algorithm in your DNA. It's going on right now in every cell in your body. That is this is an actual algorithm in your DNA, written up in computer language so that humans can understand what's happening. That's not like an algorithm. It is an algorithm. If, results, else, then, these are mental processes. Okay, information is specified. Now, here's how we know that DNA is not a product of abiogenesis, but a product of design. DNA is a physical medium encoded with immaterial information, which is organized linguistically and operates algorithmically. Algorithms have no mass or dimension. They're produced by intelligence. Algorithms are created by forward thinking and decision making, which are mental processes. Okay, so I'm not going to go through all these points. It's empirical. Algorithms are a product of intelligence. Information, the DNA product cannot be a product of natural processes because chemical determinacy cannot have organized the DNA base pairs because any base pair can bind to any of the sites on the ribose backbone, any of them. There is a dependency between one strand and the other, but that chemical dependency can't have ordered the information on one strand. And information is a non-material fundamental entity which cannot be produced by material processes. Information is a product only of intelligence. Therefore, DNA is a product of intelligence and not material processes. Since all organisms are prescribed by genetic information, all organisms...
That's time there, Matt. That's time. Thanks so much, brother. Okay, so I've got the timer going for you, gentlemen. You guys can use the time according to however you guys want to use it. Go ahead.
Yeah. Nephilim is doing a perfectly fine repeat of his a priori assumptions, his use of jargon and all of the rest, his presuppositional origins or bust approach, where he thinks he can dispose jujitsu all of the evolution data off the field. The problem is, as we've tried to show here, is that he can't apply it to anything. Disparaging all of the science material that creationism hasn't done is a complete fog bank if you can't apply it to anything. And whether it's ALUs or mitochondria or any of the molecules that he himself brings up or the creation scientist he brings up on these various issues, he's never been able to focus in and actually come to commit himself or apply his model to how many ALUs Adam and Eve would have or why there were Prometognaathids or any of these other issues. This is the problem with all creationism. Nephi is basically a bottom feeder who's trawling off of a group of creation scientists, and there are only about 60 fact claimants in all of anti-evolutionism, so it's not a big field, and cherry-picking blips of information to fit the apologetic line. But don't take either one of our word for it. Go out and read the science on any of these things yourself and find out how gigantic the data field is and how completely irrelevant creationism and intelligent design as well on the creationism light side has been for the last decades. You can have it the rest of the time, Jackson.
Yeah, I concur with pretty much everything RJ said. We've seen Nephi has not addressed anything. And again, no, I'll just say natural selection sees many mutations. We'll say not the majority, we'll say many. Okay. That way you won't strawman me again, even though I've already said that. So, but yeah, you have not addressed anything. We've attempted numerous times to get you to address things. You don't read any of the literature, and it's painfully obvious. So I'm done.
I don't. You know that, right? I don't read any literature.
It's obvious. It is
Because
very obvious.
because I don't
You
believe what you do. I don't read any literature. Wow, it's
You don't
crazy.
have
You're
to. You
you're
don't have to
psychic.
believe. You don't have to believe what I do, but
You're
you can't
psychic.
answer.
That is
You don't.
time,
You
gentlemen.
can't
That
answer
is
questions.
time.
So.
Very engaging discussion. Very good closing there. Thank you guys. The audience had a lot of fun. That flew by. So I guess I will be handing it over to Ron Matt, who's got some super chats. I do want to say, anyone who's not subscribed to Modern Day Debate, please subscribe. It's an amazing debate channel, the neutral, nonpartisan. Lots of good debates coming up as well in the future. So lots to be excited about. James is doing a phenomenal job here. Matt, I'm going to give it over to you. You can go over the super chats and the Q&A. The Q&A is for 45 minutes. So go ahead, brother.
All right, we'll do. We got about 3 super chats in. There was a comment. One was from Stephen Steen, who said, "Sadly, James could not join us from the film set of Magic James, which is Magic Mike 2. So that's what he's up to right now." And Praise I Am said to Jackson, "Irreducible complexity, the flagellar modem, and LIU, apparently intelligent design."
Nope, they're not. Go watch my videos.
Yeah.
Next.
Okay.
Flagellum is a fascinating example. We could do tons on that.
All right. And maybe it'll come up in the questions too. And then I'm sorry, Wilson said, "RJ, how many tables have you flipped?"
Oh, well, I'll say that I have the urge to do so around Nephilim in a way that I don't other people, because that presuppositionalism grates rather. But generally speaking, I know of no tables I have flipped. But once in a while, if I have too much to drink of champagne, I might not use a coaster.
Got it. All right. Well, we're going to jump into the questions then. There was a good amount of kind of equality, which is usually most things are geared towards the creationists. It would be great. The first one, we'll go to Nethville. It is I Am Sorry, Wilson.
I'm having a hard time hearing you. There's a lot of tapping.
Really?
Someone needs to mute their mic. I'm hearing a lot of sounds.
Tain't me.
I don't
Sorry,
know.
that was me. Sorry about that.
Okay.
All right, Neff. Well, this question is actually for you, Neff. So,
Okay.
what would be the mechanism? Actually, there's 2 questions. I put them together because they're similar, so I'll just ask you both. What would be the mechanism of action for intelligent design? Also, what criteria can we apply to classify whether something was intelligently designed or not? If everything is designed, isn't it a meaningless observation?
No, I don't say everything is designed. Rocks rolling down hills is not designed. Gravity was designed. The process of rocks rolling down hills is not designed. So that's kind of a non sequitur. How does things get designed? They get designed by the personal volition, intentional volition of a mind, which specifies things. And that's one of the empirical evidences of intelligent design in living things, is that DNA specifies extremely high levels of specificity, the highest known in the world, the highest that there is, higher than any computer code information, any linguistics, Microsoft Windows, whatever. More complex specificity than that, okay, exists in your DNA. So now that's the process, is an intelligence, ordering it. Can we watch God arrange the base pairs of the DNA and build the ribose molecule? No, but we can look at the product, finished product, and infer design. Just like we can infer design if we see a pile of dirt in the middle of a field, or if we see a bicycle. Nobody looks at that and thinks, oh, that's just what weather made. But the problem is that evolutionists will look at the most complex interdependent things known that operate linguistically and possess information and algorithms and say, oh, that couldn't have been designed. So what we infer about design is, one of the things that gives us inference of design is specificity. High specificity is high evidence of design.
Okay. All right. So,
Okay. a response on that one? The obvious case is Michael Behe, who's tried to argue that the flagellum and other things are irreducibly complex. All of those attempts have been based on a negative argument that supposedly evolution cannot account for feature X, therefore, by default, it's design. What's fascinating about all of the intelligent design community and young Earth creationism as well is they never think through what a design event would actually look like. Is an entire field of wildebeests? Is an organism being created along with its parasites? What exactly would a flagellar design event look like, and when would it be? Even though they don't accept young Earth creationist chronology, they don't apply it in a chronological frame either. This is true of Bill Dembski. It's true of Jonathan Wells. It's true of Steve Meyer. It's just a fog bank. So there is, in effect, no actual design model that's being presented. It's a not Darwinism, not natural process approach. So it's a negative argument. The difficulty is Behe drew lines in sand on all of his things. He argued that if any one of his irreducibly complex components could be accounted for by natural means, so much for intelligent design, so much for irreducible complexity. He doesn't want to look close at that. And so there's been a lot of little fine-tuned goalposts moving over the last 20 or 30 years on these little points. Anyway, that's mine. Do you have anything you want to add there, Jackson?
I didn't make a negative argument. I made it a positive argument from specificity.
You think that's a positive argument?
So what you just did is attack a straw man.
What would, if I were to go back to Eden
next question,
and watch
please. This is
God
not the
make
debate section.
a probatic nathid,
We're
what
through
would I be
debating.
seeing?
We're through debating. It's question and answer.
No, okay, I'm sorry. I would have thought you would have wanted to tell us what you think happened, but maybe you don't know what you think happened.
All right, question.
I just was correcting you that you strawmanned me, that it was a negative argument. I didn't do that, James. I made a positive argument from specificity, did I not? Just correcting you.
But how do you determine specificity? There's the
That's
difficulty.
another subject.
That's the same problem Behe has.
We talked about some of that, but that's another time. We'll do that another time. I just corrected you about straw manning.
That's specific.
Just correcting your straw man. That's all.
Well, you're wrong on your correction.
Well, you did straw man me.
Anyway, you got another question there, Matt?
Yeah, it's coming for you, actually, RJ, from Dr. Argon. It is, why is it so important to fact check claims with source data and to not misrepresent those sources?
Yeah, because without it, you don't have a discipline. This is true in history. It's true in science. It's true in absolutely everything. If you make a claim, on what basis do you do? If you're making a claim that is asserting it's empirical, where do you get your information from? If you're the one doing the work, you may be presenting your own work. Has it been represented in peer-reviewed literature? If you can see examples of where people, when they make their arguments, are misrepresenting the sources, are bypassing relevant information, suppressing information in their own sources, that is a big giveaway that you have a problem. And if you're not offering sufficient argument, but only offering side arguments and maneuvers around and avoiding working out what you think happened, that's furthermore. How you determine that is to source check. And so every person should be putting everything to the same standard. And I would contend that if you try to do that with creationism, and if you try to do that with Neph, you're going to be in big trouble, and you're seeing that they're not playing fair with their sources, or they have a tunnel vision dogma that's so rigid that it doesn't allow anything not to fit.
Got it. All right, the next one is for Neph. This one's a statement that goes into a question. To consider the supernatural probable, we have to show that it is possible. Do you have any confirmed examples of the supernatural and not a proposed, like life or the universe?
Sure. Well, the existence of the human mind. In fact, every word that comes out of the mouth of every person in the world, evolutionist, atheist, Hindu, Christian, it doesn't matter who you are, when you speak, you empirically verify that you have a non-physical mental intelligence. And that's because we use language. Language requires symbolism. It's dependent upon symbolism. But the application of meaning to a symbol or interpretation of meaning from a symbol is a mental process, not a material one. It's not a chemical process. That's a mental process. So when we speak, say, for example, I say the word dog. When I write the word D down on a piece of paper, a dog does not magically appear sitting on my desk. Okay, the arrangement of the matter simply symbolically represents the animal, the sound of duh, and the O likewise and the G g. And then we get more symbolism involved when we apply those three specifically in order. We get the word dog. But those are symbols, and they represent something that's other than the paper and ink or the bits of data being displayed on a computer screen. So the symbolic meaning of those letters representing the dog, which is external to the paper and ink, is symbolism. Symbolism has no origin in material chemical processes. Matter isn't forward thinking. Symbolism requires forward thinking. It requires that an intelligence says, this arrangement, when I arrange this in such a way, it will represent something external to itself. And someone will be able to recognize this and interpret it and the symbolic meaning of what it means. So the application of meaning to a symbol and the interpretation of meaning from a symbol or mental processes, not chemical ones. And so language, because it depends on symbolism, is empirical evidence that every human being has a non-physical component that is not comprised of chemistry. And so whenever we speak, we provide empirical evidence of the supernatural. That is something that's above and beyond the natural, that is not explained by the physical or chemical processes of a human brain or a human entity. And so the empirical evidence for the existence of the supernatural exists with every word that every human being will ever speak.
All right.
I'd like to put in a comment on that. The linguistic evolution and also our brain systems are also areas that creationists avoid like the plague. I know I track that in my tip work. So, for example, our linguistic system is actually hitchhiking on the primate brain system that's used for gesturing, not vocal calls. And in fact, there was just a brand new paper, I think, in Science about how the actual act of pointing is a substructure that plays a role in linguistic systems.
But James, symbolism doesn't exist in chemistry. I'm sorry.
What?
Symbolism doesn't exist in chemistry.
Don't go back onto that. Sorry. You brought up the subject of language and the like. I'm just pointing out that if you want to find out just how much has been done on the field of brain evolution and linguistic evolution, you will find zip on it in the creationism lexicon because they're not ones doing the work.
Symbolism requires external meaning to be applied to something that requires forward thinking and external meaning. That doesn't exist in chemistry, James. I'm sorry.
But it exists with neurons, and neurons are ultimately made of chemicals. You're at the moment a scatter. I can bet your anterior cingulate cortex is just a buzz all through this debate.
The argument, if you want to debate the existence of mind independent of the physical body sometime in an actual structured debate, I'll happily do that for you. But you can't
or an unstructured debate. Either way, that's bring it on. Anyway, next question.
Symbolism doesn't exist in chemistry, no matter how many molecules you put together.
All right, next question, guys. Neff, that was that I am Wilson. He actually super chatted. I guess you didn't finish answering his question, so I'll ask you this next. I'm going to keep it even, but it's basically, what was the mechanism of action for intelligent design? I think he was going to say. But,
intentional volition and forward thinking are the actions that specify. I think I already addressed that.
Okay, I'll keep an eye out in the chat for him to make sure he's content with this. Both RJ and Jackson for this one. What level of observed bacteria and viral intelligence would cause you to consider that there was an intelligence behind this or the result of design?
Oh, I'm not expecting to see intelligence in bacteria. They don't have nervous systems. You have to get way down the road into multicellular organisms that now have much more sophisticated neural structures, and you're not hitting that initially. And Jackson can weigh on that as well until you're starting to hit jellyfish. They have some interesting little feedback things, and there's a huge technical literature on the origin of nervous systems. So it's a category mistake. No, I'm not expecting to see intelligent behavior, although there is quorum sensing in bacteria, but that's an unintelligent process. Even rudimentary tit for tat, you scratch my antenna, I'll scratch yours, actually shows up in yeast. So there's a substructure of things that are kind of like in the same way that the Fibonacci series shows up in a lot of plants. That's not designy, it's just the way material systems function. But anyway, I'm sure Jackson has more to say on that than I do.
I'm honestly confused by the question. The idea of applying intelligence to bacteria and viruses is very bizarre. I'm not. Are you asking how could we determine like intelligent design is in from a god in that? If so, how could I'm not really sure how you could do that. I suppose if you were looking at their genetics and their proteins and whatnot, and any of it were not coming about through mutation and other natural forces. Other than that, I'm not really sure what to tell you. It's a strange question. I apologize if I just misunderstood.
Fibonacci curves are a result of chemical determinacy in crystals and things like that. But when we find them in organisms, we have reason to believe in design.
Next question.
All right. Neff, the meteor hole that's in Mexico, the size of Manhattan, when did this happen? After the flood, before the flood, or was it the cause of the flood? And where is it recorded that it happened if the flood is so recorded?
Okay, ask the question again. I didn't hear the first part. To understand the first part, say it again, please. What about Mexico?
The meteor hole that's in Mexico.
Okay, yeah. Well, there's evidence that may not actually be a meteor hole. It's more likely a giant bubble in the surface of the Earth that has come up. There are many of these on the Earth, and this one happens to be extremely large. So I don't believe that it's a meteor impact. I believe that I've forgotten the scientific name, the geological name for these, but it's likely material that bubbled up from the Earth like a gigantic like a bubble in mud that bursts. This is likely what happened.
Are you talking about like lava plumes?
The Chickasaw supposed impact site. Well, I'll say this about it also. It's believed that this is what brought the iridium layer that's found in the geologic column. But that could be explained by the waters that exited from the interior of the Earth to flood the Earth, because highly mineralized water coming out of the Earth could have easily brought a layer of iridium to cover the globe.
No, actually, I do have things to say about this. I do actually have something to say about this.
Yeah, so do I.
Have you heard about the tennis site recently?
No, I haven't.
So this is a layer that has been found recently, as in like January or February or something like that. It was early this year, which actually records. It is hours after the impact site in Chicxulub. It is the same layer. Yeah, it is the ejecta layer from the impact. There are tektites in the fossils.
There are assumptions that go on.
Hold on. Neff, do you know what a tektite is? Do you know what a tektite is?
I don't play evolutionist question games.
I'll tell you what a tektite is.
Because you're an ignorant boob.
There are many assumptions. Hold on.
No, I've been sitting here silently for like 20 minutes.
There are many assumptions that go on.
No, it was my question. Let me finish.
And the fact that it's found buried within sedimentary strata verifies it was created by the flood.
It's my turn. What do you think? That's not even possible. First of all, I encourage you to take a course in geology. That's literally not even possible. But tektites are meteorite ejecta. We have found them in large quantities in the KT boundary, as we would expect given a freaking meteor, and they're in huge quantities at the tennis site because a meteor hit the planet. It was the Chicxulub meteor. It's not hard. This is not rocket science.
There's evidence to the contrary.
No, there is none.
Let me put my 2 cents in.
The fact that this layer and any layer like it that we find in the geologic column is sandwiched between sedimentary strata proves it was created by the flood.
That's not even possible. How does that work?
Let me put my 2 cents in.
How does water lithify sediment?
It cannot have been produced by uniform.
How does water lithify sediment, Neff? Please explain that to me.
If you want to debate the geologic column and the flood of Noah,
Neff, I'm asking you this one simple question. How does water lithify sediment? Please answer.
Materials concrete into stone because of the mineral
content. How does water lithify sediment? You are on record now as not having answered.
Lithification is a product of sedimentation.
How are you getting these sediments to compound atop each other in different layers, and lithification is occurring in each one? How is that occurring in your worldview? Because there are no creationists to explain that.
that's
There are-
explainable by the flood of Noah, and I'll be happy.
No,
to
it's not.
debate that
There
with
is
you.
not a single creationist who
Well, you
attempts
can
to
say
explain
it's not
this.
true, but the geologic column cannot have been produced by uniformitarianism. It's impossible.
Do you know how I know that creationists don't attempt to explain this? I have read them. RJ and I are both reading them right now, writing a book
yeah.
about their idiocy,
Anyway.
and none of them attempt to explain it.
James, the geologic
Whatever,
column.
Let me get my
comprises
Chicxulub
sedentary
points
strata.
in.
Okay,
May I do so, Matt?
RJ, if you want to throw
Thank
in,
you.
and then we'll move on to the next.
Yeah. First off, the fact is that, yes, it's quite correct. The creationist geologists have never worked out how the hell it turns into rock so fast. Nobody in that area has worked about that because it's physically impossible.
That's not true.
But specifically on
Experiments
Chicxulub,
have been
it's
performed.
not just Chicxulub.
You
There's
just
a
lied.
huge number of.
You just
Please,
lied.
Nephi, please hold off.
You just lied.
You get pissed with me and I get pissed with you, but neither way. The thing is that there's a long stretch of meteoric impact material. I cite some of it in tip 1.2 at my website. You can go and look through the technical literature on that stuff. It's not just Chicxulub, which happens to be the one that comes at the end of the KT. You've got the Manigukan crater and all that crater that's occurring earlier. Craters are very distinctive. I invite you, Nephi, to write your monograph on the notion that the Chicxulub geographical feature was produced by a bubble of lava. We invite you, we urge you to write that paper, and we will want to see the evidence that you present for it.
It's not worth my time, and as I've explained, the geologic column cannot have been produced by uniformitarianism because it's comprised of sedimentary strata which have clear distinct boundaries, which have clear distinct boundaries between them, an absence of erosion and particle size distribution that's only producible by moving water.
No, there is not a particle size distribution. That's a lie, actually.
That's false. You just denied.
No, if you have ever actually no. The particle size of layers varies dramatically between layers. Are you kidding me?
Sure.
Are you joking?
Yeah.
Jackson, particle
How
size
on earth does that
distribution.
indicate a flood?
Jackson,
How?
Particle size distribution is a prominent feature of the geologic column.
No, it's not.
Wow.
Of course,
You are
particles
out of
have
your
variation.
mind.
They don't
Wow.
fit the flood model, though.
So every
You are
geologist.
out of
Anyway,
your
get back
mind.
to
You
the
have
questions,
never,
Matt.
like,
Take
you have
command,
never
Matt. You're
read
the
a
moderator.
geology paper.
We got more.
Jackson just said
You have
every
never read
geologist.
anything on sedimentology in your life. You have
Jackson,
no
you
idea what you're
just-
talking about.
Jackson, you just said every geologist.
You have
in every geology
no idea
course.
what you are talking about.
Hold on, Jackson.
None
Jackson.
whatsoever.
You just said
Nope,
every
nope.
geologist in every geology course at
You are wrong.
university.
You have never taken a geology course.
I
You
hope
know
you're having as
nothing
much
about
fun as I am,
geology.
Matt. We have very different worldviews, but this is hilarious.
Here's more of the pseudoscience, folks. Look it up for yourself.
Flood.
Particle size distribution is not a prominent feature of the geologic column, so says Jackson Lee. Wow.
You just admitted that particle size varies by layer.
It
You
varies.
just said that.
I didn't.
Yes.
So it varies.
It varies wildly by layer.
It varies, but it's a prominent feature in the geologic column. You said it's not.
What does that
That's
mean?
scientific.
Nephi,
Not
what does that
matching
mean?
creation science.
that mean?
version.
That's scientifically false.
What does that mean, Nephi? Explain that sentence
More-
to me. What does
That's
that mean?
more evolutionist pseudoscience. Jackson, you're not aware of this.
What does I'm asking you to explain what you mean by that, Nephi, because clearly we think two
So,
different
Jackson,
things. When you
here's a
say
little
let me
here's a
no,
little school lesson for you.
When you
When
say
you get out
Nephi,
of this
when you
hangout,
say
go to
Nephi,
Google
when you say
and look up
no,
particle size
when
distribution.
you say
Start reading
particle
what the geologists have to say
distribution,
about it.
when you say particle size distribution is a prominent feature of the layers, what do you mean by that? Because obviously we're thinking two different things. So what do you mean? Spell
Wait.
it out for me.
That means a very great number of the stratum in the Earth have display particle size distribution, which you just denied.
Which means what?
Which
Which
means
just-
what?
Are they big, small, up, down, pointy? What do you mean by particle size distribution?
What do you mean by what is particle size distribution? Do I need to tell you
Yeah,
what it is?
what does that mean? If
don't
you're
know
looking
what it
under
is?
a microscope at a deposit,
I
what are
thought
you
we were in a
looking at
Q&A
that say,
section
oh,
here.
there's a distribution?
I thought we were in a
Whatever.
Q&A section here, not
We
Evan
are.
trying to
We can move on.
teach you what
There-
particle
he-
size distribution is.
We can move on.
Flood question.
He has no answer.
Yeah,
Let's move on.
move on.
Sorry.
You might have to answer it anyway. So the next one is I am Wilson. He just super chatted $5 for this one. He says, Neff, where did all the effing water go after the flood?
Oh, that's easy. It's in the oceans.
In the ocean.
There's a model that explains how it got there. If you look at the pull up, here's a cool thing you can do. Pull up Google Earth and look at the coastal, the edges of the continental plates all around the Earth. And what you'll see is vertical striations in the continental plates. These were caused by two things. One, the ocean floor sinking after the waters that were in the Earth, that flooded the Earth, were evacuated from within the Earth. They left space. Gravity pulled the ocean floors down to fill that empty space. And so that's where the floodwaters went, into the now deeper oceans. Now, another profound evidence for this, that the ocean floors sank, and for the flood of Noah, is actually the massive amounts of frozen methane hydrates that line the coasts of the continental plates of the Earth. There is absolutely an enormous amount of energy stored there in these frozen methane hydrate deposits all around all the edges of all the continents of the world. It's so much so that that NOAA says, National Oceanic Administration says, there's enough energy there that if it could be mined efficiently, it would power the whole world for a century. So now that's explainable by plant matter being ripped off the continents, floating along the edges of the continents, just like if you put a small floating thing next to a big floating thing in the water in a bathtub, the small floating thing, because of the cohesive properties of water, tends to migrate towards the big thing and stick along the side of it and stay there. Well, that's what happened with these massive mats of plant matter at the end of the flood of Noah too. Instead of floating off all over the whole oceans, the majority of it should have floated along around the edges of all the continents. As it rots, it sinks, and it becomes then raw matter for aerobic bacteria to turn into methane. And then further sedimentation buries it, and now you have massive amounts of frozen methane hydrates lining the continental, around the edges of the continents. So the simple explanation is that is the flood of Noah. The waters are in the oceans now. That's where they came out from in the Earth, and now they're in the bottom of the oceans. One more point about that is there is nowhere near enough sediment on the ocean floors to account for uniformitarianism. There's only about 20 million years worth. If uniformitarianism were true, there should be hundreds of millions of years of sediment on the ocean floor. Where'd the sediment go? It's not there because uniformitarianism is not true.
All right.
Do you not know what plate tectonics is? Are you joking?
Apparently not.
Are you kidding?
Concept created by a young Earth creationist over 150 years.
What?
Are you joking? Like,
Plate
are you for real right
tectonics
now?
was first put
Document
forth
that,
by a young
please.
Earth creationist.
What is the name
People
of
are
this person?
adopting our ideas and stealing
That
from
was
our
Alfred Wegener,
What?
who was not a young Earth creationist. What on earth?
Yeah,
are
we want you to
talking about?
document that. And we want you to document that claim about all these hydrates and all that. Put your creationist papers up that discuss
That's
these
easy.
things. All that I have ever seen in any of the creationist literature on this stuff about floating forests and all these things are what amounts to a cartoon. They do not get anywhere near accounting for the detailed straight-up material.
so
But by all
James-
means, put your sources up on that so we can see them.
Okay, so James, are you saying that these methane hydrates are not deposits, are not there lining the continental edges?
Oh gosh, I've been studying methane hydrates for quite a while. In fact, there's some circumstantial evidence that a few odd Bermuda Triangle events are actually due to big boom bubbles of methane coming up and altering the sea up on the top. No, there's a ton of those, but I'd like to see your creationist explanation. Just waving, okay. It's the flood, it's the flood, it's the flood, ain't gonna cut it.
Okay, so you're saying that the methane hydrate deposits aren't there around the edges?
No, that is not what I
say
said.
that.
Do not
That is the
misrepresent
exact
what I just
opposite of what he said.
There are
Okay,
methane deposits, and I invite you, I urge you, I plead with you to put your sources up so everybody who watches the video can go down into the comment section, see your documentation, and inspect it. Do that, please.
So you want me to put up the same information you believe then, right? That there's methane hydrates?
No, I'm saying you put up your source material, unless you're pulling it out of your ass like a methane hydrate deposit there, you had better put up your sources on that. By all means, document it.
You're confusing. You're saying there is or is not these methane hydrates lining?
He's already said they
put up
exist.
your sources that say they are from the flood.
Oh, okay. All right. Oh, okay. So that's what I thought you meant.
Neff, next one.
Okay.
Okay.
You got another one, Neff. If scientists are motivated by religious arguments, then why are some of the scientists who are creationists still believe in evolution? What exactly motivated them?
Well, there's two things going on there. One, there's a couple of things really. For some, it may be a spiritual reason why they're not willing to accept. If uniformitarianism is not true, if special creation is true, it makes the crucifixion of Jesus Christ for your sins extremely personal. Some people like to distance themselves from Christ in that way and still believe it be a Christian. That might explain a small percentage of them. A large percentage of that also, I believe, is that many scientists who have lucrative jobs know that they'll be canned from their jobs if they doubt evolution. Those things are changing. That's changing slowly in the scientific community. It's not quite as dogmatic as it used to be because of creationists suing universities and exposing this discriminatory process. But so for some of them, many of them, it's going to be the fear of losing their jobs, so that they'll argue that evolution is true. For those who actually believe that evolution is true, I would just say they're simply misguided. People can be misguided no matter what their religious beliefs are. Or atheist beliefs. Being misguided is not an argument against the evidence. So.
All right.
Okay, I'll just put in that since I study all this area beyond the little young Earth creationist niche that Neph represents, is that religious scientists have been existing from the get-go, and ones who want to pay attention to all the data pay attention to all the data. You tend to find that people who are full young Earth creationists tend not to be in fields they are terribly expert in. And if they are expert in those fields, they tend to ignore huge swaths of data. That's certainly true for Snelling and others. You find some creationist cosmologists, but relatively few, virtually no working paleontologists in the field, not because they aren't allowed to do work in the field, but their mythology blocks off their ability to make sense of most of the data. So if you look at the stuff that Chadwick and Brand and other people are doing, it's very limited. They still publish, but there's only so far you can go with a model that doesn't work.
So, James, here's my response to that is all the evolutionist scientists are scientifically dead wrong, putting forth garbage pseudoscience from the 19th century. And you're berating creationists for putting forth the truth.
Oh, really?
Wow.
Eugene Koonin lives in the 19th century?
Wow, just wow.
Lenski lives in the 19th century? These are the people doing the work.
Evolutionism is 19th century science. I pointed that out
with 20th and 21st century data, which your side ignores 90% of the data from. Anyway, Matt,
interpreting it with 19th century mind. That's what they're doing.
All right, guys. Jackson, and then RJ. It's actually for both of you. What do you guys think about alternative evolutionary theories such as orthogenesis, saltation, and structuralism?
Well, that depends. It kind of depends. Well, okay. Orthogenesis is directed evolution, so that's a no. Structure. Yeah, the saltationism is also a no. We know that there are no macro mutations, which are just starting holes, there are some very, very limited examples of what we call saltation speciation, like a polyploidy, but that's really in like plants and a few invertebrates. Yeah, it's not a whole. There's not a whole lot of examples of those. There are. As for structuralism, that kind of depends on what you mean. I've actually been having. I had a back and forth with Inspiring Philosophy, where what the structuralism that he proposes is not the structuralism of Simon Conway Morris and Michael Denton. They are far more structuralist than he is. There are some aspects of structuralism that are normal, that are fine, that work. I forget the name of it. There are Turing mechanisms, for instance. That's that's a structuralist thing.
The stripes on animals come about from Turing mechanisms, which are the way cells interact in the epidermal layers. Conway Morris, I think, has a legitimate point about how a convergence would play a role in multicellularity. That the way biological systems function.
I thought we were answering questions, not making arguments about evolution.
We are answering the question. He asked us what are our thoughts on alternative evolutionary theories. We are giving
and ultimately that bases on data. And I'm sorry, Neff, unlike you, we really are interested in the data.
Yeah. So so there are aspects of structuralism that fit into the modern evolutionary synthesis. Not really orthogenesis and very little saltationism, but
They're
that's
supplements, not rivals.
right. Yeah, that's so. Does that answer it thoroughly?
Yeah, those were his 3 examples, and you answered each of them. So
Okay,
that
cool.
should be personal question from Snake was right for Neff. When do you want to do that microevolution debate you offered me last time? Also, what does the creation of life have to do with evolution?
Well, I would be more interested in debating Snake again. If it was the case that when I do debate him, that he would actually provide scientific evidence and references instead of just telling me what he believes. I've become bored with debating some people who are unable or unwilling in a debate that lasts an hour to just tell me, nuh-uh, that's not true. And that's the whole crux of their arguments, instead of sources, images, discussion, data, facts, things like that. So I'm not sure I'm interested in it at all.
Well, he likes to debate. Maybe you can find another topic other than that one. Like he'll talk about any subject.
Well, I've debated him about 4 times now, and the vast majority of everything he has to say is, that's not true. This is true, without providing any sources, without showing any information, no screen shares, no nothing. And that's, to me, boring. So.
Okay, well, I'm sure he'll be leaving a comment after this one. All right. Neff, again, what is your take on the theory of the scholar John M. Allegro, fleshed out in the book The Sacred Mushroom and the Cross, that claims that Jesus was a psychedelic mushroom?
I've heard the claim. I'm not real familiar with it. I haven't read it. But I would just say that was, that sounds like something you'd hear almost from Richard Carrier. Richard Carrier doesn't even go that far into Lot land. That's really bizarre. There are so many arguments that just make that whole claim look so utterly ridiculous. The argument for the historicity of the resurrection of Jesus Christ, the fact that the apostles were scaredy cat deniers at first, and their lives were transformed to become bold proclaimers, willing to go to their death for what they knew to be the truth, or what they perceived to be the truth, what they witnessed and saw, and said that they witnessed and saw. We saw this man Jesus. We laid our hands on him. We did this, etc. Then there's the evidence in the Old Testament which verifies at least 365 fulfilled prophecies of Jesus Christ. And there's Zechariah 10:11, in which God says, I think I got that passage right, 10 or 11, 10, 12, something, wherein God himself says, he is the speaker, I will become the one who is pierced, and they will look at me and mourn for me as one mourns for his only begotten son. And so God himself says that he will go to the cross for our sins in the Old Testament, fulfilled in the life of Jesus Christ. There's the names prophecy of the book of Genesis. In other words, there are so many arguments that the Bible is actually, in fact, the true inspired word of God, that possesses knowledge that it could not possess, repeatedly over and over, specific knowledge like scientific foreknowledge, fulfilled prophecy, that because of all this, it's just absurd for anybody to say Jesus was a mushroom popper, or that the apostles were, and that's where they got the idea to write about the events of Jesus' life. That's so utterly unacademic that I don't even think Richard Carrier would swallow such a bogus idea as that. It's preposterous.
All right. For RJ and Jackson, sure. It says, has it ever been scientifically demonstrated that life can come from a non-life, from Utopia Buster?
No, no one's ever
that's
tried.
An Origins of Us question. No, we haven't worked that out yet. That's correct. Although there's been an enormous amount of work on there. It's way more complicated a thing to solve than lightning forming in a thundercloud. We don't know how that works either. It is, if you're using that argument, as Neff and other presuppositionalists do, to try to dispose of all the evolution data afterwards.
I'm an evidentialist, not a presuppositionalist.
Sure. Right.
I'm an evidentialist.
We will say though, no one has ever, as far as we're aware, at least in the technical literature, no one's trying to create life. They're trying to create a set of steps, a set of mechanisms, which could theoretically allow for the formation of life. There's a paper that came out, I think it was just today, talking about high energy amino nitriles and things like that. And so no one's trying to just take,
and there's
you know,
abiotic protein formation that's just
yeah. No one's trying to take, you know, the prebiotic soup and form a bacterium out of it. That's no one's ever done or attempted to do that. So it's kind of that's what like creationists like to straw man.
None of that makes the reptile mammal transition go away.
Yeah, my response to that would be, it's scientifically impossible. Abiogenesis is scientifically impossible. Experiments have shown they can't even get a decent carbohydrate to form, and yet carbohydrates are extremely complex. When a mayonnaise,
do you know what a carbohydrate
forms, there are 6 potential binding sites on that molecule that would begin the production of a complex.
Do you know what a carbohydrate is?
They would begin the production of a complex carbohydrate like one life can use. There are 6 trillion potential combinations that can be produced to produce the complex carbohydrates that life desires. Excuse me, Jackson. So there are 6 trillion potential combinations of these molecules that can be arranged to produce a complex carbohydrate like the one's life requires. There's only one that works.
Nephi, I got a question for you. What are the 3 atoms in a carbohydrate?
I don't take evolutionists.
What are the 3 atoms in a carbohydrate? What are they?
I don't take evolutionists.
You don't know. You do not know. How do you make this argument when you don't know?
Okay, so I don't remember the names of them. Therefore,
it's carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen.
And you win. Therefore, you win because I don't know what the names of those are. I can't remember.
Really?
So you win. You win.
They're in the name. They're literally that's carbon, and hydrate, which is H2O. How?
So
okay, whatever.
You win because I can't.
Whatever. Okay, next question.
You
next question.
All right, next question. Neff, why does design DNA exclude evolution? Given that the DNA can change, evolution is part of that design.
Ask that question again. The evolution is a part of that design? I'm not sure I follow. Ask the question again, please.
Sure. The question was at the beginning, and then you made a statement after. It says, why does designed DNA exclude evolution?
Okay.
That DNA can change.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so DNA can change, but change doesn't equal evolution. And mutation can't build the DNA molecule. We know that now from modern scientific experiments in the design of DNA. Chemical determinacy doesn't order the base pairs on the ribose backbone of the molecule. Any of the nucleotides is capable of binding along any site along the ribose backbone of the DNA. So So why does it exclude evolution is because DNA is information which organized linguistically and operates algorithmically. And these 3 things are products only of intelligence. There's no potential for them to be produced by anything other than an volitional act by an intelligence. They require forward thinking and an intentional act, a volitional act by an intelligence. So that's empirical verification that all life is a product of intelligence. More beyond that, the sheer complexity and specificity of the information in the DNA is so great that to believe that it was this in complex order that produces the most complex things known to exist in the world can happen by happenstance associations of molecules. Natural chemistry is not supported by the scientific data journals. Nobody has published anything that gives us reason to believe it's possible. Scientists, even secular scientists, have published countless times and stated so in their books that they can't find a mechanism for it, and that it just hasn't gone anywhere. The whole origin of life field is scientifically pretty much dead. So the complexity and specificity of organic life with its outrageously complex designs does not give anybody the inference that natural, undirected, unintelligent processes has made it. Everyone, when they look at anything that's supremely complex and has function, automatically infers design. But evolutionists are people who will look at these things and then claim there's no inference of design, which demonstrates that evolutionism is a denial of science.
Okay, I have something to say about that. It's other origins or bust presuppositionalism. The moment you have a living organism, regardless of how it came about, even if
I'm
it
not
was
a
by a divine
presuppositionalist.
miracle,
I'm an evidentialist.
please.
Don't
The moment you have
misrepresent me.
an organism that reproduces and has natural variation, it becomes a Darwinian replicator, and we can
False.
trace in an enormous. Oh no, you may think that that's false. That you don't like that.
That's presupposition right there.
Paleogenomics is an example of where they are retro-engineering the evolutionary sequences of actual molecules. It turns out they're not so specific as you seem to think they are, but since you don't get close enough to the data field to spot that, all you've got is your algorithms and your jargon. You don't do that.
James,
the
you just demonstrated your
I hope we get
ideas
another
are.
question from Matt.
You just demonstrated your ideas are presuppositional.
All right. RJ. Actually, the person's name was RJ as well. RJ Brime, to RJ. And do you think you can have knowledge by means of philosophy?
Oh, well, philosophy is not merely useful, it's essential if you're dealing with undecidable propositions. Anything relating to morality and ethics and the whys of things are absolutely philosophical. You don't get at that from science, so of course. But I also have to pay attention to the decidable stuff, and there science is the mechanism, and there the duty of every rigorous person is to pay attention to as much of the data as possible. If they have an alternative view, Nephi's creationism is an alternative view, by all means grapple with the data, but grapple with all the data and explain things, not indulge in jargon.
Data couldn't exist if atheism were true.
All right, Neph, from emotionally stunted, we're down about less than 5 minutes now, so I'll hurry. Neph, what is the difference between a designed gene and a duplicate gene that was modified to perform the same or specific function as the designed gene?
Modified to provide the function. Well, modifying something to produce function is a design process. That's not undirected. And duplicate genes cannot explain the existence of the DNA. I've got an entire article about this on my blog. The 2R hypothesis, and the whole thing is just a scientific failure of the highest level. Duplicate genes can do, the evolutionist belief is that duplication, after DNA was designed by unintelligent processes, and you had it, then DNA duplications events of sequences of information then become modified by genetic mutations so that they produce information that codes for, just specifies the most complex things known to exist. And this happens over and over and over and over again. Orphan genes is one argument against that, but this duplicate information is not new information, and duplication in the so when a gene gets duplicated, that doesn't constitute new information. Okay, so evolution requires new information, a continuous input of new information, but it's not observed that duplication and subsequent mutation design genes that produce high specificity or produce new functions. That's not documented, and so the process of simply duplicating existing information doesn't satisfy the requirement of evolution that requires a continuous input of new information. It's an evolutionist myth, religious myth, that mutations design information that specify and create function. That's an atheist myth.
Okay, well, it's an amusing phenomenon that we're watching here. Nephilim doesn't keep up with the creationists. If you're a non-geneticist like Nephilim, you can make that argument about gene duplication. Of course, a duplicated gene is identical to its original copy. The moment it starts to mutate, though, it now can take on new functions. And there is a gigantic amount of technical literature on this, and creationists have accepted it. Georgia Purdom and others have in fact accepted. Please.
Somatic mutation doesn't support
let him
evolution.
finish. Let him finish.
the geneticists, that it's been impossible for the higher level genetics of the creationist movement to ignore gene duplications. They sweep them aside. They don't want to deal with the substance of it. You're mentioning orphan genes got such a laugh out of me because I did a detailed analysis of Nelson and Buggs's paper on the orphan gene issue, of where they were just bypassing the data in their own cited sources right and left. Paul Nelson is a young earth creationist, but doesn't usually identify himself.
Well, you're going to laugh at all real science, aren't you? You're going to laugh at all real science.
What?
Somatic mutation is not evidence of the evolution.
You try to tell me that all the mutations involved in all the known gene duplications are just somatic mutations?
No. Somatic mutation is what you're alluding to, and somatic mutation is a designed process.
So you keep on declaring. Anyway, get back to another question unless Jackson has something to add to that.
And then you're alluding that explains evolution.
It sounds like he just said all mutations are now designed. No,
I didn't say that.
Yeah, sure.
I said it's not documented that
mutations. Will never say is which mutations are designed.
No, because we can't ever actually get him to discuss any mutations because he hasn't read
to a wall.
Because he hasn't read anything.
You can't show that mutation can create the information linguistics or algorithms or overlapping nested and information that constitutes a genome. You can't even put that forth. And you can't show that evolution designs anything structural in any organism. Try showing me evidence that mutations
you're hearing with an evolved system right now,
show me the evidence that mutations design things.
I mean, we gave you the example of Podarcus sicula earlier, which is not named Padmakaru. That's the island, which you heinously misrepresented.
I refuted that.
No, you refused it because you don't know anything about it, and it's obvious.
Expression. That's recessive genes becoming.
You show me the paper that says they already had the gene for the cecum. Show me that paper.
Remember, Nep, you are challenged to put. You are challenged to put your documentation up about that example. That's another one. I hope you're writing these down.
How about we do this?
So you don't
How about you provide all the documentation for all the claims you've made in this place, and then I'll do that. How's that?
Watch Jackson's videos and read my book.
Seriously.
So I refuted that claim.
You have not. You don't know anything about it, and it was hilarious to watch you fail on it.
Jackson, I've studied that subject. And it's an example of turning genes on and off. Mutations, Jackson,
you didn't even know what the lizard was called. You said the lizard was the island name. You know what?
Jackson, let me point something out.
No.
If you believe, Jackson, if you believe that mutations designed all the intricate little different tissues and integrated them with the nervous system of this organism so that it would have cecal valves in its stomach, in 36 years, you have left the planet.
No, because it's already been studied. The researchers have already done the research. They've already done the research. It's out there. You haven't studied any of it.
They didn't demonstrate any such thing.
No,
they didn't demonstrate.
You have no background in any of this. You have never bothered to do research. You don't care about research that disagrees with your presuppositions because you are a presuppositionalist. All you've given us this entire time is jargon.
Jackson,
it's only been jargon.
The DNA.
You've declined on every. You've declined on every example. Let me finish.
They compared the DNA of the two.
You have declined on every example to actually engage with us. You didn't even know what a carbohydrate was.
Jackson,
you have failed. You have fractally failed on every possible point.
They compared the DNA of the two species, pal.
It's the same species.
It's the same. There's no evidence that mutation took place to build it. And if you believe it could,
literally no idea what you're talking about.
You've left the planet.
No idea what you're talking about.
Okay, good luck believing mutations designed cecal valves in 36 years. Good luck.
We're over on time, guys. I was letting it go.
Sorry.
Or if you wanted, you can leave do a 1-minute statement to close out, and then I'll make my statement.
Yeah, I'll do mine real fast. Jackson, I would like for you to explain to us in the video somewhere, if you could, how the researchers verified that random mutations designed the various different little tissues and then so that they all integrated and function together as a cecal valve, and then the integration of the new nervous system tissue and integrated that into the organism's nervous system in 36 years. There's no scientific there's no verification of that. So
it will be addressed to you.
They compared the DNA And so I just want, that's all I've got to say. I'll say two things and then I'm done. You guys can make all your evolutionist presuppositions you want. Show us the evidence that it's been documented that genetic mutations, they know the genes that mutated and created the sequel valves as opposed to being genes turned on and off. Okay, your claim. Okay, do that. Okay, so now my finishing statement is this: evolutionism is a secular religion promoted by 19th century science. My opponents made numerous claims that they couldn't support. They couldn't answer most of my questions, and they engage in presuppositional apologetics. And that's the end of my. Thanks for watching.
Thanks enough. RJ, you're up.
Oh, yeah. Short bit. We've done what we could to defend the evolutionary position and to try to drag Nephilim, occasionally, both of us kicking and screaming, to try to discuss actual data and to apply his non-model to something. And we urge him, we plead with him to put his documentation up for the various claims that he's made during the video so everybody can make use of them and see them. BJ says we should have an after show chat. If somebody wants to set that up, I'm game. Jackson, have at it.
Okay. Yeah, I think the video speaks for itself. Nephi did not engage on any points at all. Not one. He never engaged on any examples. That's pretty evident. He also didn't even know what a carbohydrate was. Seriously. That's like middle school level stuff. All right. If you want to know what evolutionary biologists think, because that's over 99% of the biologists, just read it. If you have a question, go to Google Scholar, type in, a subject and read the technical literature on that. If you, RJ and I make videos, where we cite the literature. We mentioned
Don't
the flagellum.
take any of our word for it. Research, right, exactly. Do your own reading.
Exactly. Yeah, we did a video on the flagellum where we provided literature on that. We did a video on evolution ATP synthase. We provided literature on that. Lots and lots and lots of stuff. Nephi has no idea what he's talking about, and that's pretty much it. Yeah, maybe an after show. We'll see if some people make it. So,
yeah.
Thank you.
Reunite Gondwana land.
All right. Okay, everybody. Well, thanks for watching. I hope you all enjoyed. One of the thanks Standing for Truth, if he's there listening, for the help. That was helpful. Thanks, Jackson and Neff and RJ, for coming and doing the debate. I hope you will come back and do it again. And don't forget, if you enjoyed this debate, to hit that subscribe button below. And if you personally want to debate, then just leave a message, and James will get back to it as soon as he's back in town. And have a great rest of your weekend, and have a good night.